Go ahead and call the meeting to order. First item is electronic participation. Section 2.2-3708.1 of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended, permits members of the Board of Supervisors to participate in a meeting of the board through electronic communication means from a remote location in certain situations. Supervisor Mary Biggs has requested to participate remotely in the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors Virginia meeting scheduled for Monday, September 28th, 2020 at 7:15 p.m. to be physically held at the Government Center in Christiansburg. The reason for the request is due to ongoing medical concern over the next few weeks. Only members physically present can vote to agree to allow participation by other board members requesting to participate remotely. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. DeMont?
Aye.
Ms. Bowden?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Chair Christiansburg?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Next item is closed meeting. Be it resolved, the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia hereby enters into closed meeting for the purpose of discussing the following. Section 2.2-3711, paragraph 1, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. Library Board. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bowden?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs? Aye. Ms. DeMont?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Chair Christiansburg?
Aye.
7 ayes.
We are in closed session. Come out of closed session.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs? Aye. Mr. Mons?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Now for certification of the closed meeting, whereas the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies. And two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion conveying the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. Is there a motion?
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs? Aye. Mr. Mons?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Now, if our county administrator would lead us in our pledge.
Yes, if we could rise for a moment of silence, and then I'll lead everyone in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pledge, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
All right, under public hearings, proposed ordinance amending Chapter 10 zoning telecommunications.
Mr. Chair, I believe our planning director, Ms. Gibson, is going to walk us through this public hearing this evening and also the second one as well.
Came very quickly today.
Yeah.
Good evening. So this will be a little bit different than what it typically looks like on your agenda. Your agenda reflects 2 public hearings, but I'm only going to do 1 presentation. They kind of go together, and I'll try to set you up for that sort of at the end. But it's just easier to do it as one staff presentation. The text changes we're going to go over first are specific to the zoning ordinance, and they're to address updates in telecommunications facilities. The text amendment was initiated by changes in the state code, and as we went through the process, we have some other changes that we're going to share. There were 2 bills, one in 2017 and one in 2018, that each had changes that we needed to reflect in our ordinance. Special use permits can no longer be allowed for co-location of small cell and micro wireless. And then there was a section about right-of-way for facilities in that year as well. And then in 2018, their new administrative requirements that was making it so towers 50 feet in height or less can go through an administrative review. So that means that staff reviews them and issues a permit instead of having a SUP process with you all. And then having an expedited review procedure for the construction of micro and small cell. So when we got started on this, we did some research. Marty had already shared with us some of the direction that we knew we needed to take. We took a look at our existing language in our code. We looked at other localities who had already adopted some of these changes to see how they had done it. We did coordinate, again, like I said, with Marty throughout the process. And once it got to the Planning Commission stage, we took it to the Development Committee back in July. We had our work session at the Planning Commission in August, and then there was a public hearing on the 16th where the planning commission was able to make their recommendation for you all. What I did on this was I went through, and anything that was basically something we had to do, you're gonna notice that it has an asterisk on it. There were some other changes that were just needed to make those work. And then there were some opportunities for us to try to make the process overall better as we look at expanding access throughout the county. The first section, and I'm gonna have to ask you to not look at the page numbers because they don't match up, and I just realized that when the chair called on me, these were the page numbers that worked with the Planning Commission before we separated them into. So at the very end, you'll notice that there's definitions, and several of these definitions, you can see them with an asterisk, were basically requirements. I mean, our staff didn't come up with a not larger in dimension than 24 inches and 1 inch in width and all those. Those are actually from state code, and we're trying to be compliant. So those are just lifted straight out and put into our ordinance. You'll notice on this slide that one that doesn't have an asterisk beside it is the data pool, and we're going to talk about that in some detail, because this is the way that Montgomery County is going to try to address the requirement of 50 feet or less if you're doing a monopole and you meet some basic requirements, that you can go through the administrative process and obtain a zoning permit. It also means that you pay $30 instead of $2,500. So it's a little bit of a cost savings there also. Prior to this, we did not differentiate on the type of structure. So any telecommunications facility had one flat fee. These definitions existed. You'll notice that we added the specific information about micro, wireless, and small cell in the first for the attached language. That's for that consistency. And then the only change we made in freestanding was we tried to make sure we differentiate that that doesn't include data poles. So you can't be both things. You're either going to meet that 50 feet or less monopole design and be able to get that straight permit, or you're a tower and you can't be both things. Then you'll notice where the meat of the ordinance has everything listed out. And I'm just going to go through basically the highlighted portions for you. In each district, there is some sort of change. In each district, we added data pool as something that could be allowed. And then these, you'll notice with the asterisk, already allowed telecommunications facilities by SUP. And so in order to be compliant with state code, we made the changes that were needed for those. And this is really the meat of the ordinance because we have to put all those other uses in there. So we tried to strip it down and just be able to show you that in most of our R districts, we don't allow, other than in RR, the telecommunications facilities, but we will be allowing the data poles. And that's one of the districts that we've already seen the requests come in for. People are looking for things like attaching them to fences, or maybe putting up a small post that could be a repeater to pull it off of somewhere nearby. So we think that these will be very helpful in our R districts. And same thing throughout the rest of the non-residential districts. You'll notice that wherever we already had that SUP for the facility, we expanded it. And then every single district at a minimum qualifies for the data. And we have a chart that kind of shows that a little bit better that I'm going to get to in just a second. But just to finish up, basically the crux of the ordinance, we had to add permitted structures and required yards, that update that you saw in 1041-7A. And then in 1048, these are additional regulations that we added to special use for these types of facilities, that just made sure that everything we were asking of a provider was consistent with what state code says we can. So if you looked at our ordinance now, you would basically see these two classifications, and then you would see where we allow them. Freestanding towers by SUP are that top row there, and then attached towers by right. We don't talk about those a lot, but attached basically means that you're able to co-locate onto something, and we have that throughout the county, and you can see that that's by right. If you look at our new sort of expanded, this shows some of those same definitions, but expanded to meet state code, the data poll across the board. And you can see how they just kind of either line up with where we already allow the SUPs or where we expanded those for the other uses. And then that sort of leads into the second part of this. In our agricultural and forestal districts, we have a list of uses that we're allowed to allow for there. And there are things like residential dwellings for the farm owners or members of their families or employees, obviously farming, agriculture, things like that, but very specific. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to add that data poles, towers attached or towers freestanding could be allowed there. It doesn't mean if the zoning district doesn't allow for it that they would be allowed there. It doesn't mean that they would have a different review. In fact, they would probably also get an ag and forestal district review before the planning commission and before you, just to be consistent with that section. But it enables it. When we took this to the ag and forestal district committee, who already had their meeting this year, we got a lot of positive feedback. One of the things that they noted was several of them would like to take advantage of something like this because they said that they had unreliable service. Even some, I mean, one of them was right off of Pepper's Ferry and has unreliable service. And then several of them, just by nature of the structures they may have, maybe it's a silo, maybe it's a barn, maybe it's just something that is great for a co-location or attaching something to it. So we got a lot of positive feedback. There was a little bit of concern by one of our members that potentially what we would be doing is opening things up for more development in these areas, whereas, you know, we're trying not to encourage development in our AFDs. But, you know, we were able to share that we aren't changing our other land use policies. This is just something where we're able to get a type of infrastructure to our citizens at a time where we're seeing more of a need for it. And we're able to take down some of the barriers for that. And Supervisor Blevins was quick to let them know that it was for people who are here already and not an open call to add more. And we definitely, staff agrees with that. So that is the intent there. The Planning Commission, like I mentioned, held their public hearing. They were in favor unanimously of the changes and made that recommendation to you on both ordinances. I will say the commission has done a lot of work in the last year as we've been working on the comp plan to make sure that we're talking about high-speed internet as a utility the same way we do with other utilities in the county, to try to make sure the comprehensive plan lines up and is more modern with our way of thinking. So that's all staff has for you. I'll take any questions before we open the hearing.
I don't think you're going to get a lot of questions, but does anybody have a question? Mary, do you have a question for Emily?
I don't have a question, but I really want to compliment her on the layout of it. It's very easily understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Well, I guess as they say, I reckon not.
Okay. Well, I'm not giving it anyway.
Okay. All right, well, that was 2 for 1 tonight for our public hearing. Nobody signed up for either public hearing, but I'm going to go ahead and call the first one, ordinance amending Chapter 10, telecommunications. If anyone would like to come forward, state your name. You have 4 minutes. Seeing someone coming forward. And your address too, sir, please.
Sir, my name is Wayne Coleman. My address is 1741 Stratford View Drive in Blacksburg, Virginia. And I must confess, I have no idea what this is about as far as the legalities of it or what they're moving towards, but they keep talking about attaching antennas and antennas on poles. And so I'm suspecting that it's about 5G. telecommunications. So if I'm wrong, please forgive me. But if it is about 5G, there should be somebody in the planning commission, somebody maybe that you guys designate, to really look into the, quote, conspiracy theory about the harmful effects of electromagnetic radiation on human beings. The 5G, as it's rolled out, and there's going to be 40,000 satellites. There's approval right now for 40,000 satellites just by Elon Musk, SpaceX, to cover the planet so that they can communicate with a 5G network, so that cell phones can get immediate reception anywhere, just about anywhere in the world. The thing that has not been investigated is what is the effect on little people? What is the effect on elderly people? And so I just want to plant that bug in your ears that I know I've probably read 50 to 100 hours worth of documentation, worth of research about 5G. And I'm concerned. And so I'm just hoping that somebody in the county and in the state, but everywhere I look, it doesn't seem like people are aware because it's kind of kept under the carpet. There's a lot of money in 5G, big, big, big money. And so the conspiracy theory doesn't get much voice. But I want to just make you aware of it, and I guess that's all I can do at this point. I don't even know if this presentation is about 5G, but I think it is because they're talking about towers. In 5G, they have to be within like 100 feet apart or 200 feet apart in order for it to work. So you're talking about, in for instance, the town of Christiansburg, you're talking about these antennas placed on buildings every other block, which means the whole area, residential area and so forth, is permeated with 5G electromagnetic radiation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the ordinance amending Chapter 10 telecommunications? Seeing no one come forward, I'm going to go ahead and close that hearing. And for the second hearing, ordinance amending Chapter 2, Section 2-147 telecommunications. And seeing no one there, I'm going to go ahead and close that public hearing. And next up, we have public, I'll let you go ahead and get.
If you don't have any questions,
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Catch her now.
Given this gentleman's comment, do you know anything about that?
I'll let Marty answer.
I mean, what we're doing is what the state's requiring us to do. I assume it's probably 5G, but the Telecommunications Act, which is a federal act, it clearly states that you cannot consider health risks or health consequences when approving anything dealing with towers. And you cannot, you just cannot consider it.
Wow.
Only the state, people at the state level can, if they so chose to change the law. Or is that a federal law?
Telecommunication is a federal law.
Federal,
Yeah.
FCC. Mhm.
Yeah. Now, these are state changes that the state's doing to enable Verizon and the other providers to do what they want to do. But the Telecommunications Act still governs how localities approve and disapprove towers. And with these antennas, they have by right now if they co-locate, and they have by right if they're under 50 feet. So you've lost any authority to regulate those thanks to the state. So the state can take away your land use approvals, but then the Fed can also limit it, and they limit it with the Telecommunications Act by saying when you're considering towers, you cannot even consider health risks. When I'm talking about health risks, I'm talking about what the gentleman was talking about.
Yeah. Thank you, Marty.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, next item up is the public address, and we do have one person signed up, Betty Coleman. If you want to come up and give your name and address, you have 4 minutes. Any written statements and/or comments to the supervisors, you can give to the clerk, the board clerk, and you have 4 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Betty Coleman, 1741 Stratford View Drive. And I got these in the mail. Let's all register to vote. And it's put out by the Virginia Department of Elections. And they are addressed to 2 people. We rent out a room to international students. And these 2 people have not lived in Virginia for about 3 years. And so I assume that this Virginia Department of Elections is sending these to everybody that's ever lived in Virginia. And it turns out that these 2 people are international students. They can't vote anyway. And to make it worse, they're both from Iran. So it concerned me that these things are going out to everybody and anybody. So I'm going to put these over on her table, and you guys can look at them or throw them away or whatever you'd like to do. But I would also like to pray for the voting for the elections. And God, we do pray that you would give us safe, honest, legal elections, and that only people that are citizens would be able to vote. And God, we pray that there would be no way that ballots can be submitted that are not legal. And I pray for our county that it would be a safe time, that November 3rd would not have riots or protests or anything that would harm anyone, Lord, in Jesus' name. And we just commit this November 3rd election to you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that has not signed up that would like to come forward and speak during public address? Seeing no one, I'm going to go ahead and close public address. Our next item is addendum, and I have been handed
We do have one addendum this
an
evening.
an addendum to move this item to the consent agenda, and that's an appointment to the library board. Do we need to have a motion on that, Marty?
Yes, sir.
If
So
we
moved.
got a motion? Got a second? Madam Secretary, if you'll call that.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, next item is the items of consent. Is there a motion?
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, now, item we've been waiting a long time to hear, and that is, we're going to go into work session. Is there a motion to go into work session?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
y'all have to fight it out.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, we're in work session.
Mr. Chair, first item this evening is I'm going to recognize Brian Hamilton, our Director of Economic Development, to talk a little bit about the county's broadband initiative and where things stand. And we also have with us tonight Mr. Michael Clemens from GigaBeam. And Brian, I'll let you introduce Michael after you make your remarks. There you are. Where'd he go?
I appreciate the time to discuss this very important issue. Make sure we get the presentation on correct. So what I'm going to go over tonight is basically where we have been, the studies we've done, and of course, where we're going with the new partnering with GigaBeam. So as I mentioned, I'll go over timeline of the events that has occurred, the 2 broadband studies that were partially funded by the Department of Housing and Community Development, the RFP for internet service providers with the selection of Gigabeam, and then the VADI grant application. And then, of course, we'll review the wild cards. And Michael with Gigabeam will go over the the VADI grant and the vision for the countywide service. So we began in February of 2019 with applying for a $3,000 PHCD planning grant. And with the help of the New River Valley Regional Commission, we developed a plan for addressing broadband needs in our community. And from this grant, we also conducted citizen surveys on paper at the libraries, especially, and electronic response options on the status of broadband in Montgomery County. There was about 1,500 collected. And then a management team was formed from local governments, community organizations, citizens, and businesses to come together and discuss the broadband in the county. And then August 2019, we received the second Department of Housing and Community Development grant to fund the comprehensive study of the county's broadband needs. August 2019, proposals for broadband services were submitted, and this is for planning services. Thompson and Litton, of course, partnering with Blue Ridge Advisory Services, were chosen. November 2019, we had the initial report identifying unserved and underserved areas of the county. And then in May of 20, in between that, you have COVID. May of 2020, we had the final report presented to the Board of Supervisors. Preliminary costs to provide broadband service to all of the county, and wireless services was estimated at $8 million, and fiber to the home was estimated at $32 million. So that is every home in the county. And then finally, in June 2020, we did the request for broadband internet services for an ISP and selected Gigabeam as our broadband services provider. And then on August 17th, Montgomery County partnered with New River Valley Regional Commission and Gigabeam to submit a Department of Housing and Community Development Virginia telecommunication grant. So you have seen this slide previously. The unserved areas of Montgomery County, of course, 12 areas, totaling approximately 3,000 homes. Then underserved areas, and these could be areas that already have service, but it's at 10 megabits per second download and 1 megabit per second upload. The new definition is 25 megabits per second download and then 3 upload. So again, quite a few underserved communities. I'm not going to read them off. And then we ended up having almost 6,000 underserved households. And this is a map of Montgomery County, of course, other areas. The underserved is in the reddish color, and the unserved is in the blue color. And as you can see, running all the way from approximately the Roanoke County line, underserved areas of the county, Catawba Mountain, Brush Mountain, north of Blacksburg, and then down Peppers Ferry Road into Union Valley or Shawsville, underserved, with a very large unserved area down Allegheny Springs. And as we also did our broadband assessment, we tasked Blue Ridge Advisory Services with coming up with a vertical asset inventory. So this basically lists all of the water tanks available in Montgomery County that you could attach a antenna to provide a signal. And then also public and nonprofit facilities that are within the county. Now I'll turn it over to Michael Clemens with Gigabeam.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here tonight. Just going to go over the company, give you a little background of who we are, what we plan to do here for Montgomery County. Start off with a little bit about myself. I'm the founder, president, and CTO of Gigabeam Networks. Born and raised in Ridge Creek, just right down the road. Currently live in Bluefield, Virginia. 1996 graduate of Virginia Tech with a bachelor's in environmental science. And everybody always asks me, how in the world do you run an ISP with a degree in environmental science? Long story short, it leads back to my youth. And it all began right there. About 36 years ago, got my first computer and been hooked on them ever since. Environmental science was a great field to be in. I actually worked for Giles County for a few years with PSA. I was director of solid waste there. Kind of specialized in solid waste and managing landfills, things like that. But I kind of went back to my hobby and my passion and got into IT work. I worked for Radford City Schools for a little while, started the company about the same time. We became an ISP in 1999, offering dial-up, if you remember those wonderful days. Done pretty good with that. But also, of course, all the technology is changing, and if you don't embrace technology and go with it, you're done. So in 2004, I incorporated the business and became a WISP. I've been researching that for about a year, 2 years before that. And basically, it's a way to provide broadband service wirelessly. So in 2004, we built our first tower in Ridge Creek to serve my family, my neighbors, all those kind of people. Did very good, expanded into Monroe County, West Virginia, and throughout a little bit of Giles County. Up to 2009, we purchased Four Seasons Wireless in Bluefield. Basically, we merged with them and doubled our coverage area, all doing fixed wireless. Basically covered Tazewell County, a little bit of land, Mercer County, Russell County, those areas, on top of the Giles and Monroe and those areas. When I went to Bluefield, oops, go back. When I went to Bluefield, of course, I founded the company's WVVA.net, and of course, in Bluefield, West Virginia, is WVVA.com, the local affiliate for NBC. So we had mass confusion when we did that expansion. Everybody thought we were the news station. Got calls all the time wanting to report news stories and things like that. So in 2014, I decided to reorganize the company and do away with the WVVA.net name. And that's when I came up with Gigabeam Networks. Basically, WVVA.net still exists. It's the parent company of Gigabeam, Clemco Development, and Information and Communication Technologies. And they all have their own purpose, but the main thing we're talking about here today is the ISP, Gigabeam Networks. Since then, we've expanded service into many areas, 8 counties in 3 states, Kentucky, West Virginia, and of course here in Virginia. Currently, we have formed, since that time, partnerships, just like we've done here today, Blaine County, Giles County, all the ones listed here, knowing that we needed those relationships to help get better broadband for our area. The area around here with body grants and things like that require a public-private partnership to happen. So seeing that, I began working on that many times just to get those relationships set up. So basically, this thing keeps hopping on me, I don't know why. This is what we do. Right now, we do fixed wireless broadband.
You didn't Dutch at that time, I thought.
No, I'm not even near it. Put my hands down. I don't know what it's doing.
Can you use the arrows on the keyboard? Yeah, see if that'll calm it down.
Hopefully. Right now, we do fixed wireless broadband. We offer service right now from 10 to 50 meg to all of our customers. And we're adding 100 meg plans right now. We're turning those up in certain areas as we speak. I have no idea.
You might want to step back. There might be some kind of electrical something.
And we've also deployed our first 5G style network in Bluefield, West Virginia. We did that about 2 years ago. It does gigabit speeds wirelessly throughout downtown Bluefield, West Virginia. And we partnered with them to build this, mainly to attract businesses to downtown because it's been an area that's struggled for years and they're trying to redefine it. The best thing that happened about that, right after that, Intuit, Microsoft QuickBooks, they came to Bluefield looking for a place to put in a new call center in their innovation labs. Our project helped them come to Bluefield, which created 500 jobs immediately just from that small network. Something I'm very, very proud of. We plan on doing more of that. Actually, we'll talk about that a little bit here in a minute. 5G is a mixture of technologies, but the main thing it gives you is high capacity wireless networks. And that's what we use. We use everything from 5G, but most of our standard network is Wi-Fi or basic 4G LTE technology, doing fixed connections to homes and businesses. We're aggressive with our pricing. We try to make it affordable for everybody. We start at $45 a month, includes the router, everything you need to have service. Something else we're also doing is we're adding add-ons. Telephone service, which is something that with RDOF and all that is required by the FCC for us to offer. But we're also adding video streaming TV for streaming television with local channels and the mix of normal cable TV that you like to watch. Starting this year, we also are becoming a FISP and building our first fiber networks. And we have 2 projects currently under construction or starting construction. One is in Bland. It's 30 miles of fiber right through the corridor of Bland County. That's an ARC project, Appalachian Regional Commission, I think that's what it stands for. Okay. We partnered with them in the county to build that 30-mile project. It's going to connect all coal-impacted businesses there, as well as residential. To make the project feasible, we acquired an old cable company that was going out of business. They had cable up on poles that was 20-some years old and not useful anymore. We're overlaying that cable plant with fiber. So we have no build out. It's basically an overlay. No make ready. It's just over top of the old cable. We're able to do those 30 miles of fiber for a little under $1 million, which is a deal. And of course, that sets up Blaine County to expand and do broadband throughout the whole county. That'll be its core infrastructure to do everything else they want to do. We also work in Grayson County, and that's a project you probably have heard about, the ADD pilot project. We're partners with Appalachian Power and Grayson County to build 240 miles of fiber there. That's going to cover about 70% of the unserved population with fiber to the home gigabit service. The other 30%, we got the VOD 2020 grant to finish that act, and it's going to be fixed wireless. So we'll have a hybrid network where everybody that's unserved in Grayson today will have service within the next 15, 16 months. On top of that, AEP's got a pilot project in West Virginia, and we were just awarded that as well. So we're going to build fiber in Mingo and Logan counties, just like the Grayson project. That's just getting started. We still have a lot of work to do there, but it's going very well. Of course, we're a small company. I founded it. We're all local, but we're focused on getting these services to everybody in Southwest Virginia and Southern West Virginia, primarily, to help everybody we know. I mean, it's my friends, my family, my coworkers, everything else. So it means a lot to me to get these connections set up for everybody here. And in the past year, couple of years, I've invested close to $2 million in my company, expanding these services, and we're ready just to continue that for the next several years. So anyway, what's a WISP? A WISP is a wireless internet service provider, and it's primarily fixed wireless. Like I said, it's not mobile like your cell phone. It's a connection from something like the poles you were talking about earlier to a stationary antenna at a person's house. gives very reliable, high-speed service to that customer, just like cable, better than DSL, some of the best service you can really get. It's estimated that there's over 3,000 WISPs in the U.S. today. Most of those are like me. They're small and they're dedicated to the locality to make this happen. Here's a few pictures actually of us working. First picture there, I'm actually on the bottom on the tower. That was the third tower we ever built. A little small one over in Monroe County, West Virginia. We also built small poles, just like your permitting was talking about earlier. We have bigger derricks. We go set our own poles, and you can see one there constructed that's solar powered. So it's completely off grid and provides service to several community houses in a small community. And you can see at the bottom a residential install, a basic install, what one kind of looks like. There's different size antennas. That's actually one of the largest ones. And then what's a FISP? Basically, that's of course a fiber internet service provider. And fiber to the premise is the Cadillac. That's about the best service you can get because the speed is virtually unlimited. We have yet to tap the full potential of what fiber networks can do. And the thing I always tell everybody is, no matter how you're connected to the internet, it always leads back to fiber optics. If you're on your cell phone, if you're on our fixed wireless network, anything, it goes back and talks on a fiber network somewhere, somehow. Typical fiber to the home networks are called PONs. They're passive optical networks. And the whole idea behind that is there's no electronics between the laser and the home. So you have a laser at a central office or a head end. That laser beams light to your home with nothing else in between, no other power, anything. It's all delivered from one end to the other. That one laser light is split different amounts, typically 32 to 1. So one laser will feed 32 houses. And that makes cost go down because you need one strand of fiber to feed 32 homes. So that brings your cost down versus doing direct fiber to fiber connections to each home. Typically use GPON. That's the current technology feeding that PON network, and it does 2.5 by 1.5 gigs of internet to that share. So that 32 customers will be sharing 2.5 gigs of speed. But there's also XGS PON. That's the new thing. It's 10 gigs by 10 gigs, and that's really fast. I don't know if you know speeds as to gigs and megs, but 10 gigs is a lot of bandwidth. What we push for rural areas is hybrid networks. And it's just like what we're doing in Grayson. Basically, you build a core infrastructure of fiber optics that covers the majority of your population where it's feasible and get that high capacity speed there, and then build off of that fiber network to do wireless. So basically, that fiber is closer to our wireless access points and makes those faster too. That ends up getting what I call a last mile customer. One's way out, middle of nowhere. Are capable of getting 100, 200, 300 meg download speeds versus bringing it way off of a tower that's miles away. You might do 50 to 100. So a hybrid network to me is the future. And in your example, well, in the report, it was 32 million to build a fiber network and 8 million to do a wireless. Basically, you would be looking at something in the middle of that, probably around the 20 million mark to do a hybrid. So you would save $12 million and get everybody covered with high capacity service. Our vision for Montgomery County, of course, is to connect as many people as possible to a reliable and affordable internet service. That's our goal really everywhere. We want to work with you, the county, of course, to make this a reality because we strongly believe that this partnership is the only way to do it feasibly, to get grant money to help make it happen. It just works all the way around. If a private company could do it on their own, they would have already built it. I would have already built it. But the numbers just don't work. You have to have something to make up the difference. And this partnership is key to finding the money to do those things. We also like to think outside the box, like I was talking about earlier, using a mixture of hybrid networks to make things work at a better price. So we get, quality connections at absolute best price we can get them at. And then I can, of course, sell the service cheaper to the end user. As I said, the rural developments are challenging to do because of the economics of the situation. And working with the county makes that funding a reality to us. Our first phase, we just are working on now for you. Basically, we were awarded the RFP on August 5th. And we immediately began working with the county to write the body 2021 grant. And we got that submitted on August 17th, which is quite an accomplishment considering it's about 2 weeks. Normally, I spend about 3 months on that grant writing it. So we did it in 2 weeks. Of course, fortunately, I had some background stuff to expedite that.
There's a lot of emails back and forth too.
A lot of emails back and forth. The county was great to work with. All the staff were fantastic to get that done and get that in by the deadline. Right now, that's under review from DHCD. They have a challenge process. So like if we did a proposal for an area that was already served, that company could challenge it and say, hey, we already got this. This isn't valid. So that process lasts till I think November. And they're reviewing these at that same time, and they'll make that award sometime in December or January, would be my guess. It's typically in December. So at that time, we will know if this project is a go. The area we chose to do is Allegheny Springs, Shawsville, Elliston, and Lafayette. So basically the southeast corridor of the county. And I left that up to the county to make that decision. That's one thing. I have to have feedback from you to know the stages you want to build this in. What's most important, who's most unconnected, and those type of things. We're here to help make that happen.
And Michael, if I can jump in on that, the reason that area was selected is we had also worked with Montgomery County Public Schools to look at areas where the service was, where there were the most students that were unserved or underserved, and they had done some data gathering as well. And that was the area that was identified as the area that had the least amount of service. So Brian and his staff worked with the schools, and then we conveyed that information to Michael, and that's how that area got selected.
All right, the project's total cost is $1.4 million. We requested $919,569 from DHCD. The rest is a match. And I think 10% is from the county, if I remember right, and the rest is basically my company is doing that match. A mixture of cash and in-kind services, and that's typically what we do on these grant applications. This is a picture of the coverage area. It might be a little hard to see on the screen. Of course, I know you know the area. The green is basically what we've designed to cover. And it's the unserved areas. We've got a little bit of bleed over in a couple of places that are served, but that's normal in wireless networks. Our original plan with this project was to do our standard wireless design. That's basically based on the enhanced Wi-Fi, the 4G LTE I was talking about earlier that does speeds up to about 100 meg. After talking with the county and seeing some new technology from one of our manufacturers, we decided to design this thing more on 5G style, using Cambium Network's CN-Wave platform. CN-Wave uses 60 gigahertz as its spectrum. It's unlicensed, so there's nothing to buy there, but it's high capacity. So you can do up to 10 gig speeds to the home wirelessly, which is amazing. One node at one of these locations has a capacity of 20 gigs total, and you spread that out over about 30 customers. The great thing about this type of network, it's fast, and it's a whole lot cheaper than fiber, and you get fiber performance. The bad thing about it, it's short range, so you got to have a lot more sites to get the coverage out, and it's line of sight. So basically, if a tree's in the way, it doesn't work. It will not penetrate that tree. It won't penetrate a wall. 5G is typically like that. It's high spectrum, and it won't penetrate your skin. It won't go through things. So you have to have complete line of sight shot to get it. That's why all these places want all these microsites built. for not only these type of projects, but for mobile 5G as well. They're using not 60 gigahertz, most like Verizon's using 37, 28, I think it is. But they won't go through things like your current cellular does. LTE now uses a lower band, 600 megahertz, 900 megahertz, 800 really, 1400 megahertz. This is 60 gigahertz. So it's a completely different wavelength. From that, our next phases, basically, if phase one happens, what do we do next? That's something we want to utilize and go over with the county. We have the map of unserved areas. That's what we have to go with. And this might be.
Is that Mary?
Mary, are you with us? Yeah, I think she fell off. Mary, did you make it back with us?
Yeah, I don't know why it failed.
Okay, we heard you beeping, so we waited for you.
Yeah, thanks.
So basically, what we would do at this point depends on a couple of things. First of all, of course, is funding. My company's more than willing to invest in this. We can't cover, a $30 million bill out of $32 million, but we're definitely want to be a partner in this. And knowing what funding we have in the future will decide how quick we can deploy this. Body is here every year, and they'll probably do it for 3 or 4 more years at least. So we have that to work with. But there's also federal funding from the FCC and USDA. FCC currently has what's called RDOF, Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. That is a reverse auction that private companies can do, and actually we are submitting for that. I can't really talk a lot about RDOF because we're in a quiet period, but there are RDOF areas in Montgomery County. I can't say we're going to bid on them because it's quiet period, but we are looking at that will definitely. There's not a ton of RDOF areas. There are specific places that you can bid on, but there are some in Montgomery County. They do other programs too. USDA has the Reconnect program. They had $600 million in that last year. And there's going to be more from the federal government. There's infrastructure bills coming into play, even possibly another COVID bill, and they're talking about adding broadband into those. So there's going to be more federal money available here in the next year or two on top of the state grants. And so we need to look at all those things and look at our phases and decide, do we want to do them all at one time? What technology we want to use? Break it down into different pieces if we want to, but it's something I want to work with the county to make those decisions. I think it's obvious, so I want y'all to lead the way on that, and we're here to help make it happen. So that's pretty much it. In closing, like I said, I'm super excited to be here. We're here to help you. Be glad to do whatever we can to make it happen. We want to solve what's called the digital divide for everybody.
Very good.
Any questions?
Oh, there's going to be some questions. I'm going to guarantee that. We'll go ahead and we'll start around the room. Supervisor Blevins, you want to start off?
Well, thank you. It sounds very exciting. What, if we, and again, according to phases and funding, what is the time for the Allegheny Springs project? What is the time frame?
If it's awarded in December, they basically set it up with a year contract, and they usually give you about a year and a half. Basically, we would probably build that in about 6 months. If everything goes smoothly, COVID is over. And there's a lot of factors that play into that, good weather. There's not a lot of infrastructure to build for this project because we're using microcells. So we'll be using even people's houses as possible locations for some of these sites. So the construction part of this will go very, very fast.
And that's $1.4 million to do that part of it, correct?
1.4 total, yes.
Total, okay. And we're going to ask for over $900,000, hopefully in grant money.
Correct.
And then the county to hopefully match 10%.
10%, which is the $140,000.
Okay. and then your company to do 10% investment or in-kind services as well.
10% and then another, really it's more than 10%. It's 10% cash and the rest, the balance of that was just 200 and some odd $1,000 will be in kind.
Okay.
We're basically investing close to $400,000, not quite 300 and some odd $1,000 in the project.
And you had mentioned in other localities that because of the expansion in your work, you were able to provide employment.
Yes.
What is that in something that might bring jobs to Montgomery County as well?
No question at all. And not just directly from me, of course, we're hiring everywhere as we speak. If you know anybody looking for a job right now, we're hiring multiple people because we're expanding in every direction. But on top of that, this plays into bringing business to the county. Intuit is a prime example. That would not have happened. They told us that without that project. They wanted that broadband there. And there was 12 cities in contention for that, and Bluefield beat them all out, mainly because of broadband.
And what are the major obstacles that you see? You talked about you have to have line of sight to be able to do this.
Yeah.
So what will that entail? Do we need spots to be able, I know you showed the map there of places that would be within the county that we could use. What are the obstacles?
Those are built in the design. So basically I have more sites in that design than a traditional design we do. So there's multiple sites in that plan already to get that line of sight coverage. So it's already designed into the project.
And with that first phase of that Allegheny area, what is the total, do you have an estimate of the total household that it would serve? Ideally, we would like to reach everybody, but.
Yeah, the whole idea is to reach everybody in the unserved areas there. Of course, anybody served would not qualify for the service. But the design is going around those because there are a few places there that have service. I don't remember the total for that area. I should have looked that up and
It's okay.
put it in here, but it's several hundred people are homes.
Thank you. Nice presentation.
Supervisor King.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Supervisor DeMotts.
At the risk of sounding like a horrible dad joke, you and I are on the exact same wavelength. You really asked all the questions that I had. The only one that I had, and this might be better for Brian, just to clarify, the wireless to the home estimate was 8 million, fiber to the home is 32 million. Is that just to the unserved and underserved homes, or is that looking at county-wide upgrades to all access systems?
That was generally covering the entire county. So we had to go through the entire county.
Josh is saying, come up to a mic.
Okay. The estimate came from, of course, the broadband study, and the 8 million and the 32 million, that was to cover the entire county, fiber to the home, 32, and then 8 or the hybrid approach that Michael was with.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really all that I have right now. I really appreciate the presentation. It was a lot of information that I was not aware of, and a lot of acronyms that I have never seen before. So thank you very much. I feel educated and excited. I appreciate it.
Supervisor Shepard.
Just a couple, one technical. So it's wireless to the house. Now, to get to your router, is that wireless also, or is that wired, hardwired from the antenna?
Hardwired. Basically, the antenna on your home, of course, has to be outside.
Right.
So it's mounted, and actually, if you can see the antenna there.
Right.
On that basically you have a cable. It's a Cat5 cable. It runs from there, goes into the home wherever the customer prefers to have it. That Cat5 runs power over Ethernet, so it powers the radio, but also brings the data into the house. From there, we put in a wireless router. We provide that too to get wireless coverage inside the home.
And you said one of your projects was your service cost like 45 a month. Is that right?
Yeah, it starts at 45.
Is that going to be comparable here?
We have
for
flat
this?
pricing everywhere. We don't have different pricing in different areas. So
Well,
we have one set pricing structure.
I live in an area that I have supposed to be up to 250 megabytes. Yeah, I think about 12 is as fast as I've ever gotten. So, and I pay a whole lot more than $45. So
Sure.
underserved doesn't necessarily mean just service, it's cost too. So anyway, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Supervisor Biggs.
My comment would just be, I'm very excited about this. It's been a long time coming, and Daryl sort of clarified for me, I was going to ask about the cost to the customer, because I thought that was important to know. So that's relatively a good price, I would think. Do they have to buy any of the equipment too, like the antenna that goes to their home, or the cost is $45 a month, maybe, or how does it work?
There's no cost for any hardware. Basically,
Okay.
we provide everything for the service to work. The only other fee is an installation fee, and if you sign a year contract, it's $49. So it's very low.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Vice Chair Ball.
I'll start with the cost questions. So do homeowners have to sign up for a year contract to get the $45?
No. Basically, the only difference we have is in the installation. $49 with a year contract, $99 month to month. Very few people take the $99 deal because they plan on keeping it for 12 months. And you save $50. But that's the only difference. Our pricing on the service is the same all around.
I have a question that maybe Mr. Meadows or Mr. Hamilton can answer. So this is completely different than those satellite pod things that we're going to have throughout the county. Okay, thank you. So how often are grants like this one that you just applied to granted?
Body is typically done yearly.
What's the acceptance rate-ish?
Well, it depends on the funding. Every year in the budget, they allocate X amount of dollars to broadband, and then it's a competitive grant, so it depends on how many apply. So it varies.
In your experience in Virginia?
If you write a good grant, you're highly likely to get it and do everything right. We've been awarded. This will be our. We've been awarded 3.
Out of how many of you been part of? Nice.
That was one of the questions in the interview, and he aced that one, so we kept going.
Actually, Grayson's body from last year was the highest scoring of the whole set. And we could have left, I think, 1 or 2 sections blank and still been the highest scoring of the whole set. But a lot of that had to do with the AUB project. That helped that tremendously. But yeah, it went very well.
So at the end, you went through the different funding sources from federal and state, and you kind of threw out there 20 million if we really wanted to cover the whole county someday.
In a hybrid network, roughly. I mean, that's a rough number. But
how much of that 20 million would the county have to come up with? Just 10%?
Depends on the funding.
Right, but in general, so average funding 10 to 30%, 10 to.
If you're doing body, typically the match is 80-20 minimum for body. It's competitive though, so you want to do more. Just like we did ours, about 35-40 is typically what you want to do. They want skin in the game. Federal usually isn't quite as stringent. You can probably get it almost 100% depending on the situation and the program. It varies. But you're allowed to find more of that. RDOF, like I said, you have RDOF eligible areas. It's a reverse auction. So they've allocated $20 billion nationwide for this program. And they've set pricing to specific areas. And you can look up an RDOF map and see Montgomery County. And it'll say this area here has 25 homes that need service, and then it'll start out at $8,000.
Mhm.
Well, that's a yearly payment, and it's for 10 years.
Wow.
So basically, it's $800,000 to get service to that one area. I don't know how they come up with the numbers, 'cause some of them seem a little high to me, but some of them are hard to get to areas,
Sure.
so like extreme rural areas. And there's some counties around here that are practically the whole county is eligible. Carroll County's one. Just about the entire county is eligible for RDOF, and that's probably $30 or $40 million.
So if we were to like, yeah, let's do the whole county in the next couple of years, how much money would the county really have to come up with? If you were doing it and you had the same success rate?
It's probably the 10% area.
Okay.
That'd be my guess. I mean, that's a good place to start.
And how fast could you do it?
Fairly fast.
And
We're ramping up everything as we speak. But like the Grayson project.
5 years, 3 years, 1.5
countywide
years?
fiber, yeah, you're probably looking 2 to 4 years if we started in it immediately.
But one key thing I want to point out though with these grants is, and Michael mentioned it in the VADI grant, is some of these grants allow for challenge periods. So if there's already a provider in an area, they can say, we already provide service. Doesn't matter if the service is comparable, doesn't matter if the service is priced equally. So when we talk about a countywide solution, that also would assume that all the providers are on board.
Yeah, any government money in any grant funding would have to be for unserved or underserved areas. Anything under 25 meg, basically. Anywhere else, they're not going to fund it. You'd have to be either local dollars or
And that's what we're talking about. Unserved or underserved is the $20 million, is the 10%, if we were that lucky, right?
That's true. However, one of the concerns we have, and that's why they have a challenge period, is, I'm not certain, but there are areas I know in the neighborhood near where you live, they don't have service, but they can serve it. So if we apply for a grant, a provider may say, I'm sorry, we can serve that area.
All the better.
Well, that's true. If it'll elevate competition, yes, you're correct.
My particular neighborhood, I only got service last December. So, and 2/3 of my neighborhood is unserved, but yet they call it underserved. So, what have you? So what would it take on the county side and on your side to actually get it done in the 2 to 4 years?
Figuring out the funding is the very first thing. Of course, knowing where all the dollars are coming from. As to plan and design, I mean, we know the unserved areas.
If we could
already.
tell you that we can see the $2 million, then what? What does it take after that?
And once the rest of the funding's there, if we get grant dollars or what have you, it's immediate design bid. So if we would go straight into full.
How many people does the county need in order to help support a 2 to 4 year rollout, if in fact the Board of Supervisors said, go ahead? And we could find the money, of course.
Well, the challenge would be getting the grant funds and administering those. I was going to mention that at the end, but we're partnering with GigaBeam as the primary provider. New River Valley Regional Commission is helping us with grants. We would need some additional staff, of course, to help with that. Brian and Ashland have other jobs besides broadband.
Full-time jobs.
Yeah, so it would be quite the load.
But we could contract
absolutely.
grant writers and stuff like that.
And I'm very excited. We've talked about the VADI grants. There's quite a bit of talk at the federal level for broadband initiatives too. So, I know that it's taken a while to get to a point where we are here, but I'm very excited with the partnerships we're creating. And I think the timing's right to start aggressively going after some of these dollars.
So I agree with Supervisor DeMotts about the acronyms and all this kind of stuff that I hadn't necessarily seen. I mean, I get some of that stuff. But the origination of any of the equipment or technology is all US based, or is it non-China based, or what does that look, what is that?
It's a mix, and it's actually something that I looked for as well. Of course, I mean, I've been busy about the FBI about this already. Our fiber deployment that we're currently doing is all US made product. It's a company out of Florida. It's manufactured in the US. It's completely US based. Cambia Networks, they do have some stuff made in China. They're a US company. They're in Illinois, I think it is. But their prime equipment, the one we mainly use, is made in Mexico. It's not made in the US, but it is made in Mexico and not China. So we do watch that.
Awesome. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. You were talking about this $45 a month. What do you actually get for $45? What kind of speeds is that?
45 is our base plan. And right now it's only 10 meg, which is under the definition of broadband. It's been 10 meg for several years, and we're getting ready to increase it. All our plans are getting ready to go up in speed, the same price. I've had this pricing and these speeds for probably about 3 years now. And basically it's 10 megs, 25 megs, and 50 megs. It's the three plans we offer. We're getting ready to add 100, and then brief up the others to go with that. So it'll still be $45, but it'll probably be 20 megs, something like that.
Well, one of our concerns is it does us no good to have a system in place if nobody can afford to use it.
That's right.
Now, we have lots of citizens that they would love to pay that and would be willing to pay much more because they work from home and they absolutely need it. But it sounds to me like even if you kept it at 10 megs, that would be sufficient for students in a home to do their schoolwork.
And we always ask, people don't understand speed in megs. Just like you said, the acronyms are confusing. So we try to relate that to things they know. And one thing I always talk about is video, because video is your most consuming thing on the internet for bandwidth. And to watch a high definition video stream takes 5 to 8 megs of speed for it to stream in and flow smoothly, no buffering, just nice, good service. Our 10 meg plan will do one stream. So if you're watching one TV in your house, it's going to do it. If you're watching two, it will do it, but it's going to not be quite as good because you're splitting it up. That's when you need to think about going up to the next plan. When you've got that many in the household or more users, things like that. So we try to explain it that way so they get something that fits what they need and don't be disappointed by it after they get it. Of course, we don't hold you to your speed. You can change. You can go from 10 to 25 next month. If you think you don't need it, you go back to the 10 the next month, or you can go up to the 50. It's completely up to the customer to decide what plans they want. They're not held to it for any time frame at all.
Okay. So this fiber hybrid system would be used, or that's what you're hoping to use for this project, correct?
Yeah, the hybrids are something we're trying to build everywhere. To me, it's the future. We've got a lot of wireless network now. Like I said, we cover a lot of area with wireless networks. And they're getting faster every day. We just deployed our newest Cambium long-range equipment, and we're seeing the speeds of 200 meg out 6 or 7 miles, which is quite impressive. But it's not, the gigabit like we're talking about for this project. But you have limitations with wireless where fiber is unlimited. And to get over those limitations, having fiber closer to those access points will make those faster too. Currently, for example, we have fiber built into Harrisburg. That's one of our head ends. So basically it feeds Giles County and Monroe County. It feeds 2 counties from one fiber point. So I'm microwaving that all the way over into Monroe County and feeding wireless distribution in that county from that fiber point in another county. Well, that limits my capacity because I can't bring with so much speed wirelessly over to them. Where if I have fiber in Monroe County, that I increase that immediately, and that makes that wireless network faster.
So we listed 4 areas: Allegheny Springs, Elliston, Shawsville, and Lafayette.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to run a fiber from Christiansburg all the way down 460 and then feed off of that.
There's already fiber in that valley feeding the schools. Citizens has fiber there.
I believe Verizon also.
I think Verizon does. There's 2 or 3 choices. So we would actually backhaul from them. Citizens who we use in Harrisburg. Okay. And there's others coming. You know about the Facebook fiber, I'm sure. They're building fiber in West Virginia.
You say that like you really think we're sure of that, but
Well, I figured
I've never heard of Facebook fiber. So.
Facebook's building a middle mile fiber network.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
And it's coming.
Coming right through town.
Right.
I have.
Yeah. And we've already,
I
we're
thought there
already
was some kind of software.
partnering with them. So basically, a lot of our backhaul will be on their network. We're going to have 100 gig service to Ashburn in multiple locations through them. So hopefully that'll help with this project too.
Have you had a chance to look at any of these vertical assets that are study found? And will they be helpful?
A lot of them were in the RFP. And we've looked at them there. Of course, looked at them for this project and the ones in that area. But I haven't physically seen them. I like to go out and physically see these sites too. Just haven't had a chance to get that far into it yet. But definitely, we use water tanks all the time. Of course, that's an easy vertical asset to work off of. So we're excited about those. They can't use all of them because sometimes they're in a bad spot. They're covered by trees. They're just too far away from where the houses are, those kind of things. But if they're usable, we definitely want access to help spread the network, build the network.
What we had heard several years ago from a company that told us how expensive fiber is per foot, and I'm sure there's different types of fiber. Is that a large part of the expense of putting it in?
The fiber itself is cheap. It's getting cheaper every day because they manufacture so much of it. The most expensive part is actually putting it in the air in the ground. The labor involved to build that fiber network is where all your expense is.
How about right-of-way issues? Is that a problem?
Can be. There's different ways to handle that. We're actually in the process, at least in West Virginia. If we go after RDOF funding, we basically have to become a CNA, a local exchange carrier, just like a phone company. And that gives us access to right-of-ways. That's a requirement of RDOF. So if that goes through, we're going to have to do that anyway. But there's other ways around too, where she can use private property to build off of. What we typically do, we don't bury a lot of fiber in this area. It's just too expensive to bury it. It's too rocky. So we go aerial. That's where ADP comes in. And basically rent poles. So we're putting fiber up on their poles that already exist.
Is that the type of partnership you had with Carroll County? Is that where that you did the AEP project? Grayson. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Grayson, that project is a little different. The state passed legislation 2 years ago, I guess it was, that allows a rate carrier utility to build excess fiber. They're building fiber to monitor the electrical grid. They're building excess fiber and leasing it to an ISP to provide broadband. The caveat to that is they're rate regulated, so it has to be zero cost. They're building the fiber up front. They're spending the money. I'm leasing it from them over 20 years and paying it back.
Okay.
So the electric bill is actually going to go up initially by a few cents. And then it's supposed to go down and actually be cheaper in the end of it. And then everybody gets broadband service too. So that project is right at $25 million in Grayson, but AEP is building that. We're building the last mile. We're basically building from the house to the pole. And they're doing everything else until it gets to my head end. Okay. And that's how that partnership works.
All right. So when Mr. Coleman spoke earlier, it really got my ears perked up about this 5G. You're not using any 5G in this system?
5G isn't one thing. 5G is a combination of technologies. So it's using different spectrums to increase bandwidth. It's about the easiest way to do it.
So the 60 hertz you talked about.
60 gigahertz is considered 5G in a sense. It's a flavor of it, I guess you could say. But every company's going to do it a different way. Mobile 5G is different than fixed 5G. The fixed wireless is different than mobile cellular. Mobile 5G is going to use carrier aggregation, which basically is using multiple spectrums together combined to get you faster service on your phone. It'll even use multiple towers. Right now, you only talk to one tower. And on LTE, you can max out about 80 meg, something like that. Technically, it's 112 max, but you're going to see about 80. With this, combining those spectrums and talking to multiple towers at the same time, or these multiple microsites, you're going to be able to see gigabit speeds on your phone. But it's going to take a ton of infrastructure build to make that work. And that's why they want that legislation changed, because at $2,500 a pop, they would spend millions just getting permitting. Now it's going to be brought down to $50 each, or $30. That makes a big difference in deployment.
Well, it definitely is exciting news. That's all the questions I have. Has that spurred any other gigabyte questions for anyone else? Mary, do you have any follow-up?
No, I don't think so. On the issue of the health thing, Marty really spelled that out, because we went through this with, when we first had, cellular towers put up, and even with, power lines. And it's one of those situations where we really can't do anything about it. And, it's really hard for, I think, people to understand that, but it's the federal regulations, like Marty said. And, so our hands were sort of tied on that one.
All right, thank you.
One thing about that is, like, the technology we use, we're transmitting at 4 watts. That's it. It's 4 watts. Even cellular gets more power than that, because we're not licensed frequency and allowed more than that. But it's still not like you're getting bombarded with 100,000 watts of RF. Radio stations, TV stations that broadcast over the air. We co-locate on one in Bluefield. There's 735 kilowatts transmission from that to get TV out everywhere. That's massive compared to what this is. I mean, it's night and day difference. Plus, it's low band. TV's 600 megahertz. So that's how you can pick up TV inside, So it's bombarding you right now. As we speak, it's coming through us all the time at very high levels. Of course, once it gets out, it's not as strong as it would be right on the tower. But I've been at those tower locations with it on, not had any effects from it. This is all low power. And most of these microsites, really all of them, are going to be low powered and high frequency. High frequency doesn't penetrate things. So the health concerns, while need to be watched, aren't as concerning as you'd think. The worst place to be is on a cellular site. If you're on a tower site, like I said, with a TV, you got to watch, especially if you're up by the antenna, because it'll make you feel warm inside. Not one of those. Down on the ground, no, you're not going to feel it.
It's a bad feeling.
That's more important, really, than this. Hopefully that makes sense.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I think we're done bombarding you with questions. Next time you come back, we'll probably have twice as many.
That sounds good.
Thank you.
We do have one more thing on the broadband, and I think Brian's going to talk about that. That's the WOW carts that we have worked on. We actually put those out to bid, and Gigabeam was a low bidder on that. So we're glad to have Michael and his team.
Is one sitting out there next to the
Yeah, I believe
school?
it is. Yes, it is.
Okay. I saw it coming in.
Brian's going to tell you about that.
Wow.
Okay. The WOW program we discussed earlier this year, wireless on wheels. Again, Louisa County kind of brought this program to light. So Montgomery County is contracted for a total of 20 mobile Wi-Fi units for citizen and student use. The WOW carts are solar powered, and the one you saw outside, Michael informed me they have to face due south. And so I moved it from behind the building out to there and pointed it due south to charge it up so we can test it.
Not the restaurant, the
navigation.
It has to be 180 degrees. That's completely south. So $4,000 per unit for the 20 units, which was a very good cost compared to some of the other bids. 15 carts are going to be Verizon 4G LTE, which is just basic cell phone service, goes to the router sends out the information. 5 carts south of 81 are probably going to have satellite service. This is much more expensive, but it will still, Allegheny Springs, for example, you'll still be able to get a signal there where you will not be able to get a Wi-Fi signal. And you probably saw it coming in. We've received 5 carts, and IT is getting the 4G LTE cards and getting them installed. And so that's where we are now. We should have start deployment in about a week.
Yeah, we want to get those rolled out as soon as possible because we know with remote learning for the students right now and then folks that are still working at home and whatnot, we're hopeful we can put these in areas where they'll provide service to hopefully several hundred of our residents.
And it was 1,229 passings on the grant, on the BADDE grant. So past 1,229 businesses and homes.
So that question you asked about service area. Thank you, Brian. I think you can see as well, we interviewed 4 companies when we were going through the process of the RFP for partnering with a provider. I think you can see from hearing from Michael this evening, Michael's very passionate about what he does. I talked to several of the other county administrators and some of the other Southwest Virginia counties. Michael's a boots on the ground, get it done type person. And he's got a really good business model, and he's been extremely successful securing grants. So we're very excited about having him on board with us.
Have you got any idea where you're going to set them little carts?
Yeah, you may want to come back up here, Brian.
Right. That is a good question. We've started talking.
We have the first 5 locations basically mapped out. We're trying to stick with county resources so we don't have to execute a small memorandum of understanding or contract. So Longshot McCoy Fire Station is one of the first ones that's very easy to get to. There is a Prices Sport recycling station,
Convenient site.
Yes, sir. And there's also one on Coal Bank, Hollow Road. So we're sticking to, we can put it inside the fence, you can still pull up to it, and within 150, 200 feet, you get service. So the first 5 basically start in the west and range over into mostly the north to northeast. But we're plotting areas all over the county as we, of course, get more carts. And we have approximately a little over 20 points selected. But again, a church could say no if we wanted to put one on their property. That's some of the vetting we have to do.
Okay. Supervisor DeMonts.
Just for clarity's sake, so if a student wants to use one of the WOW carts, they would need to go within 150 to 200 feet of the site and then use the cart there. There's no fee for using them. It's just you have to be close to them. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. The county's paying the fee for the cart and the service, and the student or citizen has to drive or walk to the location.
And is this kind of a bridge to better service?
The longer term, yes.
Yeah.
This was a quick way to address some needs. This was one of the projects we were able to use CARES Act money for. And we said, let's deploy those quickly. We can at least start serving a smaller group of citizens with the longer view of the grant projects. So,
And there's no capacity for, say a kid shows up with their Chromebook and the battery is dying, they don't have the ability to charge a Chromebook at the site. Okay, so you would need to show up fully charged, ready to go, and all they would need to do then is just access.
Yeah, our goal is to provide the Wi-Fi service so they could get their schoolwork done and or uploaded, downloaded.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
And this was just temporary. They're about good for a year.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, about a year would be the life. It's as the picture showed, mostly wood with a solar panel. And so it is a temporary fix until we can, in the future, distribute service in more areas.
Very good. And that was all paid for through our CARES Act funding
ma'am.
we were able to?
yes, ma'am.
Very good. Thank you.
Did you have any other questions? Supervisor King? Okay. Mary, do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Supervisor Bone?
Where's the money coming from next year after December 30th?
We'll pay for the service through
Mhm.
operating funds, right? For the LTE and the satellite, we'll have to use operating funds for that. But we use CARES money for the capital dollars.
Okay, thanks.
And we'll
That's
use CARE funds up to December 30th.
Thanks. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
So is that it for our
That's it.
broadband initiative?
That's it for broadband.
You have nobody else hiding back there that's gonna
Don't think so.
come out and wow us? All right, next item would be transportation.
I believe Ms. Gibson's going to handle that one this evening.
And I have to feel free because I have several slides I have to update before I can present. Sorry. Math is not our strong point.
You say you have to, if you have to work on that, we could take a break now because we were gonna take a break after you.
It's up to you. It's going to take me about 2 minutes to.
Okay, that's a no-brainer. We're gonna go ahead and just take a 5-minute break. 10-minute break.
10-minute break.
Thank you.
8:56.
So we'll be back here at 5 minutes till 9.
I'm ready. I'm glad that worked out. So tonight I have several different transportation related items, so we just turned them into one item for work session. There's only potentially one action item for you all to consider, so we're going to start with that. We're going to start with rural additions. Most of you are familiar with the Rural Additions program. We look at it usually about once a year, but roads that are on there have been on there for some time. This program gets a very, very small percentage of VDOT funds that has to accumulate, and then those roads that are not currently public roads but meet the qualifications can be upgraded and taken into the system through the Rural Additions program. The road on the top of the list is Cornbread Road. It has been on the list since 1998. It's about 0.45 miles of improvement and will impact 6 to 7 landowners. Right now, what we're doing, since it's reached the top and VDOT has indicated to us that they have funds available, we will be sending a letter out from our office later this week to those homeowners to let them know that they've reached the top and to see if they're still interested. Many of them may not even be the same owners, as you can imagine. So the petition we receive isn't always relevant to the people who live there now. So we just try to make contact, let them know what their responsibility is, and then what we'll help with. So they have to make sure they dedicate fee simple right of way, no utilities in the right of way. They'll need to do a plat. They'll need to sign that, have it signed by the county, and then take the next steps to do the VDOT will actually do the improvements once that right of way is established. Should they no longer be interested, maybe different owners, we'll give them every opportunity, but if they're not interested, we will have to move to the next on the list. So we're just starting.
Could you say what road that's off of? I'm trying to, in my head.
So Bates Chapel is sort of, if you look kind of in the top, see the top corner there, that's Bates Chapel Road. So this is out.
Is that next to Travel Center?
Out off exit 109, that area.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, we'll put a vicinity map with it next time. Sorry. Also, we received a request earlier this year to examine whether Gobbler's Knob Road, this road you'll notice is off of Happy Hollow, and then you can see Harding down here on the bottom. We received a request, a petition that was completed by the owners. We have to process that, send that over to VDOT, have them look. Certain roads just don't qualify. It was platted more recently. It doesn't have the right notations on the plats, things like that. So VDOT had to do some research, make sure it does. This is the action item. Should the board be interested in adding it to our rural additions list, it would go on, based on your policy, to the end of the list, and will become number 13. As I mentioned, Cornbread Road, which is currently number 1, has been on the list since 1998, and that's pretty typical. And we have let the owners know that's how that works. So if you are interested, I'll remind you again at the end of the work session, you'll just have to sort of give Vicki some direction, and she'll put a resolution for your consideration on a future agenda to add Gobbler's Knob. We did receive a complete petition and it does qualify. Any other rural additions questions? Okay.
I do. So are there relatively new plats for Gobbler's Knob? You said no?
I have no idea.
Okay. And other than that, they just have to kind of keep their interest. Everybody's just kind of for 20 years.
I was going to say, it's just a waiting game.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then no utilities.
Once they get closer
right away.
to consideration, the utilities, any utilities in the right of way that's being dedicated have to be taken out. And that is the owner's responsibility before VDOT will take it.
How much does it usually cost to do a plat?
Oh, it really depends. I mean, this will be a quite linear plat. So they won't survey, every single whole boundary of every lot. So it'll follow the road right away and then have an area that's being subtracted off of each lot. So it really depends based on the length, based on the terrain, based on the surveyor company that's hired.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that if we have interest, as I mentioned with Cornbread, we'll talk to them about contacting local surveying companies, it's sort of a shop around sort of thing, and it's who's available because some people are very busy. So it just really depends.
And so some of these lists, we don't go past 10, and then other lists, maybe we do. What's the story about this list? Rural additions list. Do we just keep adding if we want,
If
that
the
is?
board wants to.
Yep.
There's no, in any of the research that I've done, there's no cap. It's just been that there's been interest and there's been a complete petition submitted and that they qualify.
And is this one of those lists there that that roads fall off and then they want to get back to their position, or is that another list that we?
In previous years, there was a road that was not able to move forward. It was removed. One of the issues with it was a line of sight issue that was corrected and they were added. They are currently number 12.
Oh, so they went back down to the bottom of the list?
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that was the board's decision on them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mary, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Marty, we just need a consensus on this
Yeah.
for this. Where does everybody stand for adding these two roads?
Well, it's
You-
adding the one.
You would just
Gobbler's Knob.
add Gobbler's Knob as number 13.
13.
So consensus that it be on a future board.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
All right, Vicki, that's back to you, I guess.
Just wanted to give you a couple of quick updates on the Meadow Creek Farm Road realignment. This picture from Google Earth is fairly updated, so we decided to use this. It has been inspected. VDOT has deemed it complete in the process of just doing the final paperwork that we do for locally administered projects. This project went pretty smoothly. We were very pleased with the contractor on this. We had a few design tweaks that had to be made, but overall, as far as road projects go, this one went really well. In addition to the paperwork that we have to do, now we have some right-of-way that's going to switch around here. You guys will remember we held a abandonment hearing some time ago to abandon a portion of Barn Road. And now that construction is complete and we know we'll no longer use it, VDOT will go ahead and process that based on just process. Half of the right-of-way goes to each landowner on either side. Carillion is one of the landowners and has indicated since there's a home there that they'll work with them, do a quick claim, and he'll have access to the full right-of-way. So that'll be between them. The Meadow Creek right-of-way that was realigned, so you can see sort of the old road bed in the top portion there. That actually between the developer and VDOT will be working with the developer on an agreement to give him that right of way so that it will become part of the project there. So it was a great project. It's one of those projects that started before I got here. So it's kind of exciting to see it come to completion. The other project that we finished up this summer is the Prices Fork Turn Lane project. We did not have any great imagery of it, so I encourage you, if you don't already, to drive by and take a look at it. This project, as you'll remember, was 3 left turn lanes, one into Brooksfield, one into the old school, and one onto Thomas Lane. The project turned out probably better than we thought it would at different times. The sight distance at Brooksfield, I think, is probably my favorite part of the project. You can definitely see much better when you're trying to make a left turn out of there. And then you're also safer making a left turn into there. The left turn lanes will become increasingly important as the seasons change, because as you're headed out of Blacksburg down Prices Fork Road, you are usually driving directly into the sun there. And so having stopped vehicles be able to take shelter in those turn lanes should cut down on the rear end accidents that we get there. So we're very happy to see that going smoothly, even during construction, even with that temporary striping, which I was not a fan of. It still has managed to serve as well. And we're really glad to see that wrapping up. Again, paperwork on our end, and just making sure that the landscaping that was put in is being taken care of, getting ready for winter. The sad part is just down the road, through spring, summer of 2021, it's going to be a much larger construction zone. That will be the infrastructure and the entrances for the recently approved projects along that corridor. VDOT is watching it very closely and coordinating with both developers as well as the crews doing the utilities work. There's a lot of things going on. And of course, there's not the typical school times for buses that we normally use. So we use those during the turn lane project. We only allow, construction during 9 to 3 so that we could really sort of keep that window smaller. Well, with half day school, when they are in session, that's been problematic. So it's sort of open, but they're being very cautious about it. So I certainly, if you guys hear anything, we've noted it on our website. When you open the MyGIS, it shows up right away. We have some information there about it, and we'll try to keep people in the loop, especially on some of the days to expect even increased delays.
And you're talking about the roundabout they're putting in there, is that it?
There'll be a roundabout for the West Hill project. The roundabout itself and the turn lanes won't meet the turn lanes and the entrance for the North Star Church, which will meet the turn lanes for the Shaw development. So that whole area is under construction, including a utility crossing for sewer to go under. So it's heavily under construction. Any questions on either of those locally administered revenue sharing projects?
Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have any questions. As you know, my dad passed away back in the spring, and going through some of his stuff I had forgot about back in the 70s, he came before the board to try to get that entrance to Brooksfield fixed, because at the time there was 2 big white oak trees, one on either side, and you could not see to get out in the road. And there was a picture of him, I guess Roanoke Times or News Messenger. They went out with him and he spoke and gave them a little spiel, and they took his picture, and it was just kind of neat. But anyway, it's a lot better. Yeah, you're right.
It is much better. It is much better. Okay. Well, the same thing is happening to me that happened to the gentleman earlier. Okay. The last thing I wanted to let everyone get an update on is our smart scale project applications. You'll remember, it seems like a long time ago, it's probably nearly a year ago, I came before you and talked to you about our strategy on applications for this year. We decided to take everything we've learned from previous submittals on these, make them as sharp as we could, and try to go at it a different way for funding. And so I'll just walk you through them. The intersection improvements for 11460 and Allegheny Springs is the project we're going to start with. This is basically some turn lanes, again, getting the traveling public and the stops public separated from each other is very important. And then to take a look at some other improvements that will make for safer traffic in this area. So if you look across sort of east-west here is 460, you'll notice you can see an increased, if you go all the way to the far left, you see an increased storage lane and taper to use the crossover here. You'll notice that there is a crossover here. No, there's a crossover being closed. And I don't see it because we have so many layers on top of it.
It's where, isn't it
I
the
think
green
that's right.
hash? Isn't it the green hash because it was a turn lane over into the post office and the doctor's office?
The green hash just indicates that it will be a median there.
Okay.
I'm going to have to pull it up on a different map. There is a crossover that's being closed through here. This turn lane that will take you over towards the, this is technically Old Town because you're coming across 460. You've got the Dollar General here. This turn lane storage and taper is being increased. This turn lane turning onto Allegheny Spring is being increased. And you'll be able to make a right off of Allegheny Spring and then have either a straight or a left. So that this area is going to be a little wider here. This is great for day-to-day traffic, but it's also very helpful for what we experience when we have an 81 closure and we have much heavier traffic through the area. So you've got local traffic trying to do their local everyday schedules. And then you have, people who are just trying to get back on 81 some way. So the existing crossover is right here, and you notice that if you read this little label that says remove existing crossover. This small crossover here wasn't able to meet the turn lane and taper requirements, and so we were trying to make anywhere that someone was making a left turn, they could get out of the traffic. Which is an issue all along the 11460 corridor. But this particular area here, these improvements, there's obviously some drainage improvements and other things that will be part of it. But this project actually shaped up really nicely. The estimate for this project is $7,312,000. And a little change there. $7.3 million is a lot, and we're going to talk about some of the numbers when we get a little further down. The other project that we're all familiar with is the center turn lane project for Roanoke Road, also known as Route 8. Those improvements came in just over $6 million, $6.3 million. This project looks a little bit different. Their concept is, if you go to the far right of the screen, you can see the intersection that just recently had HSIP improvements at Route 8 and Union Valley, Fairview Church. This project takes that turn lane improvement all the way up to where the school's turn lane improvement is. So that's over on the far left. This represents just over basically 1,000 feet. It's not a very large project, but it will have large impacts. Again, these turn lanes are very helpful on such a busy commuter road in the county. The hatched area you see here is on the school property and is a way to address some of the drainage issues. And so should it move forward, this is all outside of the Safe Routes trail system that you'll remember that we worked on. And this would be something that would have to be fine-tuned and coordinated in conjunction with them should the project be considered for funding and move forward.
So it's a retention pond?
There will be sort of a depression here, yes. Not like a wet pond or anything like that, but it'll be an area to capture drainage. Yes. And it's currently sort of just a slope down from where the trees are, and it kind of slopes down. And you can barely see the existing. This would be outside of the fence that they have there, and then outside of the trail system that we worked on with them for Safe Routes to School.
What's the light orange below the road?
So all those areas that are light orange are going to be some sort of construction. So the green, I think, is driveways. The orange means maybe some grading for the curbing, things like that, to sharpen up the road there to make sure you have enough to have two-way traffic plus the center lane. The other side of the road actually has those too, but you'll remember we have a revenue sharing project for those where the county put up funds last round to try to leverage those and score better on the Route 8 project. We were awarded those funds for revenue sharing, and since we currently have them, we could not use them to leverage funds on this round of scoring. So we don't anticipate our score on this project to go up. The estimate for this project is $8.1 million.
That says Pepper's Ferry.
No, that was
6.3.
$6.3 million. Pepper's Ferry, this year we decided, based on the advice of VDOT, to take the Pepper's Ferry Price's fourth intersection project and turn it into two projects. They had seen this be successful in other districts where you took one large project where you were trying to, In this case, we had pedestrian improvements, we had turn lane improvements, we had actually 2 sets of turn lane improvements, and obviously drainage that goes along with those. And so we thought, because we're allowed to submit 4 projects and we had only discussed 3 firmly with you all, that we would take that opportunity. The intersection improvements on 114 came in at $8.1 million. And basically they take the, this is Price's Fork Road if you're looking north-south here and you've got the signal there in the middle. They make it wide enough to have a straight and a right, as well as traffic that would be headed towards Blacksburg. You've got increased turn lane and taper facing Christiansburg. You'll notice that that turn lane is woefully small. That area will be increased, but you'll also have a straight and you'll have a right turn. And the grading is shown here in the yellow, which will grade all the way back here and actually end up impacting Caleb there at the Water Authority. He'll get a new entrance there. This project, you can see, not that large in scale and not that many improvements. And again, 8.1 million was the cost estimate there. The pedestrian improvements to do the sidewalk and crosswalk that are used in this area. Anyone who drives the area knows that you do typically see pedestrians traveling, especially between Forest Hills and Christie's. Those improvements came in at over 3.6 million, and they are this sidewalk that connects to the existing Forest Hills sidewalk, which is great because there's a bus stop and sidewalk improvements there. Then safely brings pedestrians across Dollar General, across this area where the guardrail is, and across Price's Fork there at the intersection. So as I mentioned, this project came in at $3.6 million. We do not anticipate this to score well. When we did an analysis of the projects, you'll notice the top in the dark green. We submitted this in the FY17 submission, so that was technically back in 2016. The price for the total project came in under $4 million, and we received a smart scale score of 1.4. When we resubmitted in 2018 in that cycle, the project cost did go up to $5.5 million, but we only received the score of 0.5. So not a great score. And a lot of that has to do with your economic development numbers that are whatever's occurring in the area. For this submission, the exact same project that we submitted just 4 years ago comes in at almost $12 million. So while there's not a number in that last column there, we don't anticipate that it's going to be high. And obviously this represents 2 projects put together, but that's the total cost that we were given. The Route 8 project, which was a very strong contender for funding, we were actually right on the bubble and constantly wondering if someone else would give up their funds. Last year, we received a score of 2.1, which is the highest score we've ever received on Smart Scale. The same project last year, where we were able to leverage the funds, came in at $3.5 million. This year, our submission, as you see, is $6.3 million, and we don't anticipate this to score well either. The 460 Allegheny Spring project, we actually think is going to score really well, and we're very pleased about that. You'll notice that we have seen growth on that each year too. So going from the 0.9 to the 1.7, the 7.3 million we feel like is sort of a well represents the work that occurred there. So from staff's perspective, we were not pleased with this round of Smart Scale, as you can imagine, and we have some feedback that Craig will be sharing with VDOT on our behalf. Splitting the project into 2, especially for Price's Fork Peppers Ferry, we thought was a great opportunity. Had we been known sooner that this number would look like this, we would have put it back together and made it one project. Sort of a no-brainer. And so we didn't want you guys to see this on paper and wonder why we didn't make that choice. We had only days notice to be able to put this in, and just to put it in the portal and submit it takes a significant amount of staff work. So we either submitted this or submitted nothing, and we just decided we had it, so we did. We have some other feedback that we'll be sharing with VDOT about how the process could be improved. I think they had some good concepts that they put in place with this round of Smart Scale, but they were not well executed. And unfortunately for Montgomery County, our projects reflect that. So with that, I will just leave you with this picture that sometimes there's a lot of orange bales around and you think you're going to look at them forever, but we eventually do get through these road projects, and we're going to keep trying. So with that, I'll take any questions or feedback that you guys have.
Any questions from the board?
Just got one.
Go ahead.
The Route 8 project,
Mhm.
you said it scored good. Why don't you think it will now?
Because it basically doubled in cost.
That's VDOT's fault.
Well,
And we're going to talk to them about that.
And we're basically being penalized because the board committed $500,000 in funding to try to make the project better in the last round.
Right.
Yes.
So we're being penalized.
Yes.
And we're going to talk to them about that too.
How do you penalize somebody for wanting to help you?
Because the way that they do their cost benefit analysis, because those funds had already been allocated so they do it based on which years you'll be in. And since we already have those revenue sharing funds and that's already started, and these are future funds, you can't use them. But I will be glad to let you also speak to somebody that we're going to express our concerns about that.
Yeah. Tell them give me a call.
Okay.
Thank you. I do appreciate your staff. I know y'all worked hard on it.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Mary, do you have any questions?
Yeah, when you talk about the economic development aspect going into the funding, do they count commuters going to work in any of that?
No. One of the things that can come into play is if you're using safety, you do get scored based on if it's an area where this is also going to help with a lot of safety concerns. So they look at accidents in the area as well. But they don't look at just volume or vehicles per day, the type of measurements or metrics that we use. No, they don't. That does not come into consideration, nor do any residential projects. So it has to be a commercial project, and it has to be within a tight time window in the 2-year cycle submission.
Thank you.
Emily, I got a couple of questions. On the Allegheny project,
Yes.
Is that all going to be graded? Because the way it is now, I think it's the eastbound lane is a little bit higher than the westbound lane. So all that's going to be flattened out through there?
According to VDOT, it is. I had a previous engineer tell me that would require some sort of concrete wall to be able to accomplish it. So I did speak to them about it. But the way that they're going about it, they said that they will be able to accomplish it. They have to move some of the drainage structures that are there. But yes, that should also help with some of the line of sight issues in that intersection.
I think the PSA just fixed a pipe going through there. So tell them to tread lightly. But are there going to be, there's not going to be any lights there though, is there?
There is not. It does not qualify for a signal.
Okay. And at the last New River Valley Regional Commission meeting, we did a resolution for our smart scale projects, but there was one missing. The Price's Fork Road wasn't on there, and they didn't know what I was talking about when
The Price's Fork Road is in the MPO area, and so it was on your agenda tonight for consent agenda.
Well, I'm talking about the resolution that the Regional Commission does in support of.
Oh, the MPO did one.
Oh, they did one.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, they did two, one for each of the projects. The MPO did all of the others. So there was one with the Regional Commission because it's outside of our MPO area. And then there were 3 done by our New River MPO with Dan and the policy board.
Okay. All right. I thought that was strange that they didn't have all of them on there, but all 3 of those projects are, as far as safety, they are really dangerous. I mean, Route 114, before they built all those apartments and townhomes there was nobody there. But now you have people constantly walking down that shoulder, which is really scary, down to the convenience store and back, or to the laundromat and back. And there's just no room, and there's anybody that wants to see a backup, just go through there about 5:30 in the evening, and it backs up about half a mile in both directions. So it's really in dire need for some help. And again, Allegheny Springs, that's a good point. When we have the detour and they got to come through there, and there's no left turn lanes to speak of. There's one that's from the westbound 460 to take left onto Allegheny Springs, but you can only fit 1.5 cars on it. So it's another big safety one. And the one on Route 8, I mean, the traffic on Route 8 has increased so much since, the building has been done out there, so many housing developments and what have you. So those are really good projects. I guess that doesn't matter.
We are going to take the information we have and explore other funding sources through VDOT. We hope they will be amenable to it after we provide some feedback on Smart Scale.
Well, I was wondering, Marty, can we take some of that CARES Act money and buy like 100,000 lottery tickets?
As long as you spend it by December 30th.
Okay.
30th.
All right. Well, I'm just trying to look for, new and exciting ways to raise money. Thank you.
Kira, really appreciate that. Okay, that's all I have.
All righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and board members, last item under our work session this evening is legislative priorities. We put this back on work session because after the last discussion with the board, we added a couple of additional points under the education section. We added preserve the authority for localities to have school resource officers in public schools and continue state funding to the Department of Criminal Justice Services for the provision of incentive grants. We also added, due to the impact of COVID-19 on local school divisions, enact a hold harmless provision for the calculation of the ADM in a school division. I also copied you, the board members, on a letter that I sent to our delegation last week. VACO had indicated that was perhaps going to be discussed in the special session that they're in right now. So we went ahead. I still think it should be in the legislative priorities, but we went ahead and addressed that through a letter. Then on the second page, under law enforcement, we added oppose eliminating qualified immunity. That was something that the board had discussed at the last meeting as well. So those are the 3 additional items that we placed on our priority list. We wanted to bring it back before you to see if there were any other changes or discussion that you want to have regarding this. And based on what we hear tonight, we will finalize this for your approval at your October 13th board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on the priorities?
It looks good to me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
agreed.
Supervisor Biggs?
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
All right. No
Appreciate
other comments? I guess we're
We'll
all in agreement.
clean it up, make it nice and pretty, and have it for you for approval on October 13th.
You'll put it in one of them little booklets.
Make it real pretty.
That's Jen. Sure. Darley, okay. That's
All
I
right. Well, that's it for a work session. Is there a motion to come out of work session?
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, if you'll call a roll.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, we are out of work session, back in regular session. All right, into new business. First item is ordinance amending Chapter 10 zoning telecommunications. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Have a
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item, ordinance amending Chapter 2, Section 2-147 telecommunications. Is there a motion for that?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item, schedule a public hearing for proposed boundary adjustment agreement with the town of Blacksburg.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item is resolution of appreciation for Bill Ellenbogen.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam-
Mary, I would just say this is very well deserved. He worked really hard.
Yes, he has. I would second that statement. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, next item is National Suicide Prevention and Recovery Month, September of 2020. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I would just add that, and I don't think this is any surprise to anybody, we hear more and more articles on suicide in this country, whether it's our veterans or it's our kids or just the hopelessness of everybody dealing with COVID-19. And certainly something that we need to all be aware of. And I appreciate Supervisor Blevins bringing it to our attention and getting it on here. All right, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item, National Community Planning Month, October 2020. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Have a
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary?
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Now, I know we probably we're getting into our reports and we've probably worked our county attorney down to the bone, but do you have a report, sir?
I do not.
No report. We'll move on to our county administrator.
I have emailed you guys to death over the last week or two. I have nothing to add this evening. No report, sir.
Okay, well, that's
Whoa.
2 in a row.
About
I'm
that.
sure we won't be as fortunate now getting into the board. Not to say that's a bad thing. Certainly not. And we'll go ahead and start with Supervisor Shepherd.
No report.
Saying he just can't help himself. Supervisor Blevins.
I just again wanted to thank the board for the resolution of suicide awareness and prevention. I've had friends that have been directly affected by that and just wanted to let people know that there is help, there is hope, and that they're not alone in that. So I do appreciate that. That's all. Thank you.
Supervisor King.
I don't have no report, but I would like to thank the staff for all their hard work. I know they've been pretty busy. And there's still time to do your census
Yes, thank you.
questionnaire.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, there is.
Yeah, we do need that because that's where our federal money comes from for our schools and all operations. And one last but not least, I do want to tell the voter registrar's office how much I appreciate all they're doing. They're doing everything possible to make it easy for everybody to vote. And I know they're putting in a lot of hours to make it happen. And a lot of people it's overlooked is their spouses. So I want to thank all their spouses for allowing them to work overtime. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Biggs.
I'm sorry to following Supervisor King. I wanted to give a shout out to the registrar's office. And I've had some really positive comments from folks over here in Blacksburg that have gone to the satellite location to vote early. They said it was very easy to do. They didn't have to wait. They were really thankful that we had that extra place to vote. And also, I've had some really positive comments about folks that did their mail-in ballots, but wanted specifically to deliver them to the drop boxes and how easy that was. So I just think all of that, like Supervisor King said, we need to give a shout out to Connie and the registrar's office.
Okay, thank you.
That's all.
Supervisor DeMonts.
No report.
Wow. No biscuits, no report. Okay. Vice Chair Bone.
Two things also about the registrar, as well as the, what do we call the board that manages the registrars?
Electoral board.
So the electoral board and their
Correct.
decisions. I got to vote early and I came here and it was clean, not that many people, in and out really quick. I encourage everybody to vote as soon as possible. The second thing and last thing is I want to share a little story about my son who's 24 years old, Stefan. He was born and raised here in Blacksburg in the county, went to Margaret Beeks, went to Blacksburg Middle School, started being in advanced classes, went to Blacksburg High School, started taking the community college classes. He did take 2 years of gap, but he was accepted to Virginia Tech, so he took a couple of online classes through Virginia Tech. When he came back, he started full-time at Virginia Tech 4 years ago, changed his major to, he was a double major, multimedia and journalism, and then chemical engineering, which was his original degree of study. And then he graduated with multimedia and journalism this May. And he just accepted a news reporter job in Joplin, Missouri, which is really hard to do when you get right out of school. And so I would say that Montgomery County Public Schools prepared him exceptionally well. We have a gift of New River Community College, being able to do, I forget what you call that, but classes in high school, dual enrollment classes, as well as having the gift of Virginia Tech here, that we prepare our students, many of our students exceptionally well to go and improve the world where they are. So thank you to everybody throughout his 24 years and our school division and New River Community College and Virginia Tech.
Well, congratulations. See, when you have boys, they always go off to faraway places, don't they?
Don't say that.
But my girls, they're sticking around.
Mine didn't.
Well, he's always the exception. But I'm going to jump on the bandwagon with everybody else. I tell you, we have been through so much this year. And, of course, COVID comes to everybody's mind as the wrench that was thrown into the machine. But other things have popped up along the way. And I'll tell you what, our county employees have stepped up big time. And we really do appreciate them. And we hope to be doing things for them too. But They have done just a great job, all the departments, and it's a great feeling to be from this place because people do look out for each other here, and it's just a wonderful thing to see. So, with that said, we are adjourned.
Adjournment.